Shalom, shalom. I am bien-aimé Ephraim. Was born and grew up in Martinique. My heart is to see the descent of Africans who were deported to slavery in the Caribbean, America, Europe, to be reconciled with their family in Africa. The slave trade has had lot of consequences. One of them, who is crucial for me, is our ancestors lost their identity. They were cut off from their family, clan, tribe, kingdom, by being taken in their village, kingdom with violence, despised, mistreated, and sold to the European. They were forced to go through that non-return door. It was like they sinned and get out of the garden. But before went through that door, they were amnesiated by passing around the forgotten trees. 9 tours for the men and 7 tours for the women, for them to forget about themselves, where they come from, their family, tribes, people, kingdom. Those who was involved in that tragedy take out the human being caught and put on them the animal coats, made them weak and lost. By doing that, our ancestors were enabled to revolt themselves against that evil power who want them to be perished, made them wandered. They go around this return tree, because they were saying that if they die in the boat or in the plantation, their souls will be back in Africa. And then they were doing this turn around this tree 3rd time. Selling and buying someone called prostitution. Our ancestors were under that power of prostitutes. And this starts with the covenant that chief from Africa did with Western chief. The understanding of why the slave master in the plantation had this freedom to do what they want with our ancestors. It's because that's covenant. They were under that covenant and doing what they want. Then they even put the slave under that curse from generation to generation, saying that they will not be able to have their freedom. There were a will to divide family by separate them. And when our ancestors want to build a family, even though they were in slave condition, they were unable to do it. I read that the Pope Nicholas III, with his Catholic leader, blessed the King August V from Portugal by saying that it's good that pagan and Negro from Africa can be taken from their continent. This appealed my attention, showing me that the Negro were Israelites and the pagan was non-Israelite. The Negro were already been in exile from Canaan and then again went away from Africa to Western country. The film roots showing the life of our ancestors, especially the scene where Kunta Kinte was forced to accept that new name, Toby, with whiplash over days and days until he accepted, until he did that. Our ancestors lost their name, identity. They been rejected because of the color of their skin, sorry. And today, I can see the jealousy, the lust, and the complot to use their strength to build those society who were old and need to be refreshed and built. Our ancestors, even though it's really rare when they mention that the slave fought to have their freedom, they fought, they give their life in those revolts for their liberty. Yes, today the slave trade is abolished physically. But what about spiritually, mentally, emotionally? There are a lot of wounds in the DNA of their descent which need to be healed. Most of the time when I saw the statue of a liberated slave, it always with the chain broken, but the chain still remained in their hand with the iron. That showed me that the work to heal those areas that are mentioned is not done. On my impression, it's there are will who don't want their descent to be truly free, released, find their identity, and they do everything they can for them to stay far away from Africa, from Canaan. They hide the history or tell us that we are someone else. I have the opportunity to return in Africa by ship. This is a miracle because our ancestors go through that non-return door, this curse. But even though I did not know my history, my Creator, the Master of the universe, lead me to not only return but return by ship. And when the ship left the embouchure to go into the lagoon in Abidjan, in Ivory Coast, I have a very deep emotion. Give me tears. And I saw the vision of millions of women, and children who were calling for their husband and daddy. After arrived in Abidjan, 1 week after, I went to Togo and lived there for 7 years. And over that period of time, I'd get married. While I was in Togo, I did a voyage of reconciliation with King's Kid to the USA. It's a branch of Youth with a Mission. On the way, before leaving Africa, we visited Gorée Island, the slave house. We were around 100 and in the slave house. But we were in Dakar and we took a boat from Dakar to the Gorée Island. And everyone, when we arrived in Gorée Island, everyone went out of the boat and they were excited to visit the slave trade, the slave house. And me, I did not want to go there. And I want to go back. And I have to go over that feeling to come into the slave house. And all of us were there. And the historian start to talk about the slave trade. It was the first time I hear my history, slave trade. I cried. The tears come up of my eyes. I was so touched to hear my history because at school I learned that my ancestor was Gaulois. And when the historian finished, I felt under my skin rage. And in me, if there were a Portuguese there, I wanted to beat him until I relieve. And I was there with that feeling, sadness. You know, when the first time you are in touch with who you are, a lot of things come up in your mind, in your emotion, and you are there. You feel lost. And there was a French lady in the team. She was a leader in the team. She saw what I was going through. And she came nearby me and apologized on behalf of European country for that sin against my ancestor on me. I forgive. And then I have a friend of mine from Martinique, and with my son, we want to do a prophetic act. We go through the non-rotund. We go down the sea and want to come up through that door. And when we want to come back up, we felt a power, really a power who want to block us from coming back up. And it was the African there who gave us their hands to help us to come up through that non-return door. Then I thought it was after 2 days we traveled to USA and we stayed there 3 weeks. But I think one day in that 3 weeks, it was crucial for me. It's one day we were visiting African American communities. And when we were there, I start to feel pain in my stomach. I couldn't stand, sit, I go to the toilet, nothing. And I was really, really in bad condition inside of me. And I talked with the leader, and then they decide that we will go back in our accommodation. And it was a gymnasium. And when we arrived there, everyone sit down, and they asked me to come in the middle. They pray for me, they encouraged me, and then I went in my bedroom. It was a desk transformed in bedroom. It was for one of the leader in the team with my son. And when we were there, suddenly I wanted to go to the toilet. It wasn't far. It was just in the front, about 6 meters. And I went to the toilet. And when I arrived in the middle, I fainted. And I put on me. And I think it was time there when I was down there. And when I come back in me, awake, I was hearing people who were crying and praying and asking the unique God to let me alive. And then when I opened my eyes, all the leader was around me with tears. And the French lady who do that apologized to me. She bring me to the toilet and then to have a shower. I was very, very weak. Very, very weak. Then we continue our journey and we return to Africa. And some weeks after, I asked myself, what really happened on that day? And the answer was, I went to America, to the USA, with youth African, West African, to apologize to the African American. And I have the same story of the African American. And I wasn't really in touch with the reality of what's going on in us, the suffering. And it was like a door open to me to realize that I need to work on my history, in my life. I have to go through that. It's like if you face your history, you come alive. If not, you are sleeping, I will say dying, and people can do anything they want to do with you. And sometimes later, I have a dispute with my husband in Togo, within life, and I was really unhappy, and I went in my prayer home and giving my feeling to my unique God. And when I was doing that, I felt on my mouth like prostitution. I said, wow, what is this? And I asked my unique God, what's going on? And he tell me, selling and buying someone called prostitution. And then I was shocked. And it was evident that my life, the prostitution, the spirit of prostitution was active, even though I never been involved in prostitution. But this spirit were there, because it's true that covenant, chief from Africa and chief from Europe, did. It was true that covenant with the enemy, the spirit of prostitution. And we were there. My ancestor was under that spirit. And that go through the DNA. And I thought I'm not able to deal with that. And I asked a friend of mine who worked in reconciliation in the USA, and another friend of mine. She is from Togo. I asked them to come and help me in that process to breaking down the spirit of prostitution. And they were okay, and we meet in my salon. The first thing they did is they lay down, especially my friends from Cameroon, lay down and crying, apologize for the involvement of their forefather in the slave trade by selling my forefather to the European people, Western people. When they do that, I felt a deep feeling, anger, sadness. And the question was, why they did that? What was the motivation? Why? And I was so upset that I get up and stood nearby the wall, one wall in the salon, and I was crying, saying, why? I don't understand. Why they put their family into that suffering, that tragedy. Why? And then when I come down, I go back sit in the armchair. And I was there. And the thinking was, to forgive. It's or forgiven. It's not about a feeling. It's about a choice. And at the same time, while I was doing that, I have a vision of a man, a white man, who was forcing the black woman to put his sex in her mouth. And I have all the picture of the prostitution, because the slave master were doing what they want from the slave house in Africa, in the ship, in the plantation. They were doing what they want sexually. And I really made that choice to forgive. And then I saw it's a puir. Sorry, I forgot the name in English. With the cover, and a hand come and take out the cover. And the light, big light, come into the hull. And I knew that my unique God come with his light in my life regarding my history. And after that time, I have the opportunity to be involved in work of reconciliation from 1988 until 2007. We went in Africa, Europe, USA, Caribbean. And this year, 2020, I decided to create my enterprise. I go to school, university, religious and non-religious community. This to challenge the next generation to walk in the path of reconciliation. To have really, to be able to talk about the slave trade. I wrote the history of 3 teenagers who were captured in Africa sub-Saharan, and I work with that. And I want to see the healing of the role of humanity to be healed, because the slave trade hurt that role. And the world, even though now we can see the consequences of the hatred, the consequences of rejected black people, saying that They are animals. They have no souls. We can see the consequences in our community, wherever in the world. And one thing is, can we imagine 1 second what did that mean to be in the whole ship and chain, in the confinement? What did that mean for the slaves who were so sad having been cut off from Africa, from Canaan? They were eating soil, and the slave master, to block them to do that, they put mask. Shalom.